evening, everyone. Welcome to False Nine. It is now 9 p.m. on the Eastern Time Zone. My name is Scott Churchton with Streampunk Sports. Alongside me is Mr. Harvey Cruz. JJ Pavlik from Bad Dog Sports will be joining us forthwith. But tonight we are in the premiere episode. It's our first time doing this, so please be gentle. We're going to be talking a lot of stuff going on in the soccer world right now. We're going to be talking about what's going on with Gregg Berhalter, because the big question right now is, can he survive tomorrow? They got a massive match against Uruguay. He had an embarrassing loss against Panama, a 2-1 loss with a red card early on, and there's some big questions about whether they're going to move on with Copa. Also, we're going to be talking a little bit of NYCFC after what happened with the brutal injury to Malachi Jones, which broke my personal heart because Malachi is one of the sweetest kids I have ever seen in my life. We'll talk maybe a little Jim Curtin and everything going on with Philadelphia because that team's in massive disarray. Talk a little RBNY, which is more your wheelhouse in this case, because that team had a bit of a struggle yesterday when it came to their DC United loss. Down below, sitting in his car, is Mr. JJ Pavlik. We had a little bit of a light issue because you know what? This is the time of year where it starts getting darker. And you know what? That kind of sucks. I like the light. So, anywho's, yeah, let's talk a little bit in this case. I figure, gentlemen, I'm going to turn this over. We're going to be talking, like I said, right off the bat. Gregg Berhalter. This is the head coach of the U.S. men's national team. There has been some major questions for, frankly, a few years now at this point when it comes to Berhalter. Is he the right man for the job? You know, should it end up going to someone else, like, say, Wilfred Nancy, aforementioned Jim Curtin? I want to get your thoughts in this case, Harvey. If you want to start with you, otherwise I'll start with JJ in this case. I'll start with JJ first because I wrote it up to him first in this case. No disrespect, Harv. But when it comes to Gregg Berhalter, win, lose, or draw tomorrow night, what do you think his fate is going to be, after the outcome of that match?
Well, he's definitely not getting the win. Draw or loss, he should be fired. Unfortunately, from sources I've spoken to, the Federation has no plans on removing Gregg. If we all know what's about to happens against Uruguay. Like we've spoken earlier, like it should be Wilfred Nancy and Jim Curtin's job. Gregg has kind of outworn his welcome as head coach on many levels. I mean, like, come on, the Copa America is the biggest tournament you have going into the World Cup. And, well, Canada's through. Mexico's got a chance, and you have slim to no chance. Doesn't look good.
Yeah, looking at the standings right now, I mean, they are technically in second place, but, we've talked about Uruguay being just a brutal team. If you look at basically the scores that they've had, I mean, they've outscored their opponents in 2 matches by a score of 8-1. So the U.S. pretty much more or less would need a win against this squad, draw possibly, but a win definitely, to move on to the next round. Panama and Bolivia is honestly a brutal match in its own right. Bolivia has not yet scored at this point. Panama, of course, like I mentioned, pulled out the big 2-1 win against the U.S. In your case right now, Harv, what do you think should happen basically when it comes to Berhalter and comes to this team and what they expect? Do you think basically he can survive this?
You can make the case that whether win, lose, or draw, after this tournament, they're better off just breaking the slate clean. Thank you for your service. You took us to a World Cup. You took us to a round of 16 game where we lost to the Netherlands. We tried it one more time. We went through an investigation through some alleged stuff that you have been involved with in your past. We brought you back, and you took us to the Copa America, and we've gone essentially stale with this quote-unquote another golden generation. Look, I've said this to my buddies. Uruguay is my pick to win the Copa America. And the fact that you're having to rely on arguably the worst team in the tournament, in my opinion, in Bolivia, to beat a team in Panama. Let's clear about one other thing too. Panama in CONCACAF is no pushover. This team has given the U.S. fits as well. They beat them in I want to say not the Nations League, but I mean they beat them in a penalty shootout a while back. And if if you're telling me that you need to rely on Bolivia to beat Panama, which is a 1 in a million no matter what, and you gotta hope for a win or a draw against Uruguay, then to me, what are we doing? Then you have to wonder, how did we get here, and have we made any progress? We're relying on guys like Cameron. It's funny, the progression from guys like Aaron Long, to like Cameron Carter-Vickers at center back. You didn't use Yunus Musa really against Panama. Your team sat back for the last 20 minutes of that game against Panama, which was a bit jarring. And I kind of like JJ's suggestions of Wilfred Nancy. You want to go Jim Curtin. You want to go take your pick. You want to go European maybe. You want to go with like a Graham Potter if you want to go Buck Wild if you want to. Go ahead. The thing is this. After this tournament, you have very little, if anything, to play for afterwards. Because you're already in the World Cup. That's like the benefit to hosting it, is that because you host it, you qualify, and that's your right. The negative is you don't really play anybody. I'm looking at the USMNT website right now, and after this, they play Canada in September in Kansas City. By the way, Jesse Marsh took Canada to the knockout rounds. We're still waiting on you, Berhalter. Good luck, my friend. And they play New Zealand 3 days after, September 10th. So, we're waiting here. This has been, I want to say, it's been over 2 years of slow, steady, and slow, quote unquote, progress. We're still waiting for guys like Tyler Adams to really break through in this team. We're still waiting for Weston McKennie to really show up in big games. We're still waiting for a bona fide number 9. I believe we have 4 number 9s on this squad between Sargent, Wright, Balogun, and Pepe. And because of that, we're weak on the wings, and we're relying on our fullbacks to really give us the width and service. And with each passing game, you're seeing how big of a miss Sergio Dest is on the right. I like Joe Scally a lot, but he's not Dest. He doesn't really offer that much support offensively. So Berhalter has to work a miracle of all miracles on Monday night. And it is not going to be easy against a guy like Marcelo Bielsa, who's a tinkerman, a workman, squeezes the juice out of everything. And you're going up against arguably the deepest team in the competition, and arguably a team that can beat the likes of Colombia, Brazil, Argentina. I mean, they put 5 past Bolivia. They beat Panama handedly. So I don't see it. And I just think at this point, the better you are, the smoother this transition goes after this tournament, the better you guys are off. You can do a proper head coaching search by the time 2026 arrives.
But you're thinking do you think in this case he's going to be there through the World Cup?
No, I don't think so. I don't think he should be the guy to take you to the World Cup. I
didn't ask if you thought he should be. I asked, do you think he's going to be?
Do I think so? Because JJ brought up the rumors, and I did see Eric Ronaldo's tweet about such a thing. Oh man, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think eventually they'll pony up they'll muster up the words to let him go.
JJ, anything to that?
I don't know. I agree. Like, he should go. The problem is you have to stay within Emma Hayes' budget of $4 million when you bring in the new one. Will Wilfred take it for $4 million? Would Jim Curtin take it for $4 million? Probably. But you got to remember, this is a federation, and for whatever reason, they believe in Berhalter, and they've already put it out there from several board members. Wando's put it out there, like, they don't want to move on from Gregg after this tournament, even if he loses and they get knocked out, which is extremely shocking and kind of disturbing, given this is supposed to be the golden generation, and for the golden generation, we've gotten practically nothing out of them. except for one trip to the round of 16, which, in fairness, the guy there before Berhalter did. And, well, if Mr. Wondolowski would have just tapped the ball in the net against Belgium, they would have been in the round of 8. But, you know, he skied it into the upper deck of that stadium, and Belgium went down later and scored. But, no, like, honestly, Berhalter shouldn't be the coach, but he's probably going to be the coach at the World Cup, unfortunately.
Do you think it's one of those things where it's similar to Aaron Boone, where he's a good corporate guy? You know, he aligns well with management. He plays well with the people who have the money in this case. So as a result, they keep him around because of the fact that he's not difficult to work with.
To a degree, and he also has his brother up in the front office of the ivory tower of U.S. Soccer Federation. Kind of helps you keep your job even if you're not deserving of it. We've all seen the Federation and what the Federation does. It's no big secret.
All right. Well, it's going to be interesting in this case to find out what, like I said, with Uruguay, you know, already, like I said, the calls have been made, the requests have been made to let him go. The fans obviously feel he is not the avenue for this. The Uruguay match tomorrow night is going to be extremely telling in this case. Is again, this is a team that has outscored their opponents 8-1 so far in the first 2 games. If, you know, the U.S. goes out on a national stage on national television and lays an egg, loses 3-0, 4-1, 5-1, that sort of thing, and the fans start hearing it again, at what point do you think actually the upper brass, will they even listen at this point? Because that's, again, an absolutely embarrassing loss, you know, on home turf, you know, showcasing the best of. What actually, another question to ask in this case here, is this going to be one of those things that honestly Apple TV is going to be pissed because of the fact they dropped $250 million to showcase what the U.S. soccer can be like? And it's like, this is the egg you laid, you know, where you start looking at Apple money, and they're kind of looking at this from the perspective of, okay, what kind of shit are we pulling here?
I don't know if the two things are really related. I mean, let's be honest. If Messi does not exist with Inter Miami, how much money is Apple really going to fork into putting a 10-year deal?
I
with
can
all
go
that
into
stuff?
the Messi thing too about whether basically this was the best move or not anyway. I mean, Lord knows. I mean, he misses half the games anyway.
Right. I mean, he's not going to play against. He's not going to play the final group stage game. So you got to wonder about that. And now I mean, I get it. You're Apple. You know, your coverage really isn't the best. You're showing off all these Apple TV games. You're probably prioritizing the Leagues Cup this summer more often. So I don't know, man. But like, it's just I'm glad you mentioned like a possible score, like a 3-0 or 4-1 if they lose tomorrow, because it always matters how it looks. You know, you don't want your team. And look, your team is down to begin with. You're not gonna have Timothy Weah. You gotta find out who your number 9 is. You might have Matt Turner, depending on how he feels on Monday night. So it depends on how it looks, because you can't go out on your shield, I guess, with your tail tucked between your legs and just give up and say, hey, you know, we lost to them and such and such. No, you were expected to get out of the group. Even if you're in second, you're expected to get out of the group. So it definitely matters. And for Berhalter, I will say this: at least like Aaron Boone has Aaron Judge to kind of save his bacon. Who in this squad is going to save Berhalter's bacon, if anybody? You know what I mean? Like when the chips are down, because they've already completed CONCACAF. They're the best team in their continent by miles. They've beaten Canada, they beat Mexico, pillar to post. You know, it's teams like these incomparable, where you want to hang against the best of South America. So I want to see tomorrow if they go down early, or if they just they're fighting and scratching and clawing. Who's the guy that's gonna roll up his sleeves and just, you know, lay it out there and at least give one to save Berhalter's bacon? That might not even be enough anyway, but I just want to see if that's out there tomorrow night.
Yeah, we'll see. JJ, any final thoughts on that?
Yeah, so for the Uruguay game, I had it 4 or 5-0 for Uruguay. The U.S. is just not even. The U.S. can't even beat Uruguay's like D team. Uruguay could bring up their 15-year-olds and just spank the United States, if we're being honest. my question to you two is, let's say Uruguay wins this game 7, 8, 9, 10 nothing. Is that enough to move Berhalter out of his seat then? Because that's a true embarrassment, especially on home.
So you're saying if he loses 8-1, honestly, at this point, I almost think no. I think you're looking at this because he's been there for so long. And like you said, his brother, and I still think, like I said, he's a good team management guy. So he lines well with, the system. He doesn't ruffle feathers, part of the whole thing, like Buck Showalter with the Mets. That experiment kind of didn't work because he went up against the brass because he didn't care. Joe Girardi was the same kind of thing. So you look at somebody like Berhalter as a good corporate guy and somebody that, the top brass don't have to really sit there and fight too much. I think if it's a 7-1, 8-1 final, and the U.S. is completely embarrassed, I think he stays. I think it's one of those things that they'll put out a good statement. They'll talk about it's a team in growth. They're working hard. They're training hard. We're getting ready for the World Cup. They'll say all the corporate things, but I think he is still safe no matter what the final tomorrow is going to be.
Okay.
Harvey, any final thoughts on that?
I mean, if you're telling me 7, if we're going to now to the extremes of 7, 8, 9, 10, 0 on American soil, on prime time TV, before July 4th, I could just see the statement being put out by the federation saying, "Hey, we wish him the best of luck with any future endeavors," and then you start with whoever you want to go. You want to go Pat Noonan. You want to go Wilfred Nancy. I'm just
I would
picking
take
out
Nancy
names.
in a heartbeat. Absolutely.
I would take Nancy in a heartbeat too. I would take Nancy. I would take possibly Jim Curtin.
Mm-hmm.
I would take whoever you throw in a wild card. I remember it wasn't that long ago. We were hoping and praying a guy like Jose Mourinho would take the dare and become manager. But it's always good to at least look locally.
Yeah, unfortunately, those Marino days. Now that the women's head coach has to get paid the same as the men's, you're not getting Mourinho in here for 3, 4, 5 million, and you're definitely not paying Emma Hayes 20, 30, 40 million, which is what you're going to need to bring someone from Europe in here, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think they'll stay local with people that, also from name recognition standpoint to the local audiences. I think from a business standpoint, I think, Jim Curtin, I don't think is ready yet. Nancy could be an option. There's a few others out there. But if you brought in someone like that you can say is local pedigree, Nancy, obviously, he's not from the U.S., but he won a championship on U.S. soil. He has name recognition. He has local PR credibility. I just don't see it happen. I don't think, honestly, I think it could be 20-0. And I think Berhalter stays.
I'll give you a wild card. You went with the reigning Cup champion coach. I'll give you the runner-up Cup champion coach in Steve Cherundolo, if that's a doable thing. If he's up for it too. Yeah. Former international, knows the people there. Probably knows the player pool more than most. Who knows? We're just throwing names out there. I mean, we're throwing out 20-0 scores now, so.
Yeah, we're just going to blow this right up.
Like the average score from all the pundits is Uruguay winning this game anywhere from 3 to 5 to nothing, and that's why I was like, well, let's say this gets worse than what everybody's expecting. Would that be enough then for the federation to be like, all right, we were planning for 3, 4, 5, and well, they ended like 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever, nothing. Like that might be the straw. Like, we can't deal with that. But as we all know, the federation has its ways of spinning it like, oh, well, we were without Tim Weah and we're young, and which is the biggest cop-out I've ever heard in American soccer is the team was young. Mm-hmm. And you've got a kid that's, 16 years old on the Spanish national team, and they're moving on to the round of 8.
Listen, NYCFC right now has the youngest team in MLS.
What is age really in the terms of this game? Like, either you can play or you can't play. Mm-hmm. Like, the youth excuse is just, like, basically the American go-to excuse for every loss. We're young. Excuse us, we're young.
I think the only way that Berhalter loses this job is for something off the field. something that I think will hurt the PR side of it. I don't think it's going to be happening anything that happens on the pitch. I think it's going to be something like another allegation, a DWI maybe even. I think it's going to have to be something along the lines where it's going to be something where they have their PR department has to handle it from that regard. I think that's honestly the only way that this is actually going to ever happen, and I don't think it's going to be something that's on the pitch.
Yeah, unfortunately. I don't know.
But all right. Any other final thoughts, or should we move on here?
I'll give you one more name.
Please.
I'm not sure if he's employed or not, but Hugo Perez, former manager of El Salvador, who used to play for the U.S. back in, I believe, 94, 95. Does know English well. Does relate, I guess, to the younger guys. And look, I'm Salvadoran, and I miss him terribly. So I'm sure that he'll definitely enjoy working with the current crop of U.S. players and squeeze them into like a new formation and new tactics and all that stuff. A breath of fresh air is what this team needs for sure.
Yeah,
nice.
That's a good one.
So, all right, pull that out right there. Bring it all back to all of us. Right? Oop, nope. Yeah, we do it that way. All right. So, in your regard, like I said, I want to talk to you a little bit. This is going to be something a little bit more, Harvey, for you specifically. So, RBNY is your team. You're correct?
That's right. Season ticket holder, baby.
Yeah. Right now, in this case, it's ironic. Actually, JJ and I were there today for Gotham Women's, but that team had, honestly, they're having a good season. They're in line for a playoff spot. But what the hell happened last night, man?
Oh man, I don't even know where you want to begin. By the way, brutal draw for Gotham today, but man, I don't even know.
Yeah, 9 minutes of added time. You give up game time goal 8 minutes in. They hadn't even done the kickoff, and they already blew the whistle. Go ahead, sorry.
Hey man, I mean, my game last night had 7 minutes added time in both the first and second half. So I mean, it was that kind of game. This game last night had a bunch of storylines where Troy Lesesne, who was the interim coach last year, took the team to the wild card round, then won a game, then lost to Cincinnati. Returns as a DC boss. He took that job. And so, I mean, like 6 minutes in, they just cut apart the Red Bulls midfield with Jared Stroud scoring, who used to be a Red Bull through the draft. And, his brother Peter is on the Red Bull side, and it's like a brother rivalry and all that stuff. And so, this team is going through a transition within transitions. Like, they're breathing life without Frankie Amaya. He's gone to Toluca, Mexico. He's gone now. So what was once a strength of their midfield department is now a major weakness. It is very thin. Daniel Edelman's supposed to be back this coming weekend for the trip to Philly. They're playing Ronald Donkor from the second team. They're playing him more minutes now. They need to figure out who they're going to sign, and quickly, because the window is coming fast. And while that's happening, my team has 2 strikers who play together now, in Elias Manuel and Dante Vanzier, who are both inefficient, not clinical, and rely on others for service or major luck. They scored a goal on a penalty in the first half after Christian Dahome got 2 yellow cards in 6 minutes. They were down to 10 men for, I believe, 70-plus minutes. Elias Manuel scores the penalty. Then just before halftime, if you check the goal out, Pedro Santos scores. I know that Brian White scored a thriller, and so did Jordi Alba, but Pedro Santos is up there for the goal of the weekend, and he called in a beautiful free kick to make it 2-1 before the half. Red Bulls were pressuring. They were getting off-ball at times in the second half, and they were pressuring before sub Kyle Duncan sent in a low cross for Cameron Harper to squeeze through. One thing, by the way, Tyler Miller is not a good goalkeeper. His distribution is poor. His clearances are a bit poor, and he should have done way better to try to deny Harper. I know it was close by him, but you can't get beat like that at your near post as well. And so it finishes 2-2, and DC will be much happier than the Red Bulls. The Red Bulls are 10 games unbeaten at home to start the season. I believe for the first time since 2016, DC United has still not won a game since mid-May. And last time I checked, tomorrow is July. So this team is going through it. They are one of the worst teams. I believe they still have 4 wins on the season. My Red Bulls could have had their 10th win last night had they just, I guess, been better. And don't look now, but this Eastern Conference table is looking pretty tight. The Red Bulls are in third, but only by slim margins. They have Columbus on their tail, or your NYCFC on the tail, and don't look. And also Charlotte is tied for 5th as well with
Yeah.
NYCFC. So,
Charlotte's
I mean, who
moving
saw
up
them
little
coming?
by little here, especially for last season.
Yeah, and if you look at Columbus, look at the games played. They've only played 18 games played, and if they win the 3 games that they're supposed to, they're right there for second place with Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And so you got like this is like this Eastern Conference is a beast of a conference, and so you got to make your hay while you can. So my Red Bulls are thin. They're surviving by. Thankfully, Emil Forsberg at least played some minutes. He's been dealing with a foot problem, so he's not a 90-minute player yet. I'm not sure if he will be. He's been battling foot problems, hamstring problems. I'm not sure what other issues off the field. And I guess the best news of all is that Lewis Morgan came back early because Scotland stunk up the joy at the Euros. So and I will say this one stat that just heightens the desperate need of a striker. Lewis Morgan has 9 goals. Van Zier and Manuel combined, I believe I checked this morning, combined, the two of them have 7 goals. And so you are desperately seeking a striker, any type of clinical striker, just an average striker. We're not asking. I'm not asking for much here. They spent $5 million on Van Zier. They spent $2 million on Manuel, I believe, to bring him back on loan. And so the evidence is clear. The issues are right there in front of them. Johan Snyder needs to get to work because the opportunity is there. Sandro Schwartz is proving himself to be a really good manager that's leveled up these players. The same squad of players that last year barely made the playoffs on their Troy Lesesne and fired Garrett Struber as well in the same season. So they got major work to do to keep a hold of 3rd place because Lord knows you make top 4 is cool. No, it's not guaranteed that you'll make it to the first round. So just ask Orlando last year. So you gotta see how that goes. So you got major work to do.
Well, statistically speaking, you need somewhere between 51 and 55 points on a season to get around 4th place. If you look at the last 5 full seasons. So this is a team right now with 13 games left. They could get a maximum in that regard of 39 points, which would give them 74. Clearly that is not going to happen in this case right now, but it does give, a team like RBNY a chance to be able to get into that first round. You talked about Columbus coming up. You talked about Charlotte. I mean, even Nashville is sticking in there in the mix as well. There is a lot to say about, like you said, this Eastern Conference is so unbelievably tight that you might see teams with 40, 42, 45, 47 points that are going to miss the playoffs even under the new format.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I'll throw out one other number that is shocking for this team, especially for where they sit. Against opponents that have a record below 500, they have won 3 games and drawed 6 of them. While they haven't lost yet to one, and they come close between Vancouver and DC and Montreal of getting such losses against these teams, they're 3 wins, 6 draws. Now, mind you, their next opponents are Philadelphia and Montreal, who are also sub 500. And you've got City, Columbus, Nashville, Charlotte, Montreal slowly even creeping up there. It's nice. I love when everyone's like, well, at least we got a point, and a point is good.
No, you lost 2 points.
But you're really losing 2 points on these games when these teams are under 500. They're not really playoff teams. But then when you think about it, all right, so Jokien's statement last year to everybody was, the first round's not good enough. It has to be at least the second round. Well, Jochen Schneider, your team is in 4th. Right now, the teams that they can't beat during the regular season and can only draw are the teams you are facing in that first round. Last I checked, you don't move to the second round with a draw. You might make it to penalty kicks, but this team's not even really great at penalty kicks. It took Sean Nealis and almost Carlos Coronel taking PKs against Cincinnati and Cincinnati still edged them out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was there.
know,
I was there. John Tolkien missed one.
the
Sergeant Goff
team is
missed one.
good. They're better than last year, but a dark horse was Peter Stroud, like you mentioned. When he went down, that midfield changed completely. Nobody had Peter Stroud as the glue of the midfield for the Red Bull, but that
They didn't know what to do with
he was
them.
balling out this year, defensively,
Absolutely.
offensively. They lost him. We started seeing cracks. Frankie just up in the middle of the night was like, "Hey, I'm going to Mexico." Nobody had any idea that this kid wanted out. He just walked in and was like, "Hi, I'm going to Mexico. Here's the transfer papers." And it's like, oh, like you couldn't even wait for the window. Okay. We didn't realize you wanted out so bad. And now you've got him with Edelman's coming back after his red card suspension. But Frankie Amaya's spot was not an easy spot for this team to fill to begin with.
No, it's not.
Technically,
Nope.
Frankie had to learn that spot in 3 preseason games he had to learn that spot? And Donkor, look, he's got some speed to him, but he makes a lot of rookie mistakes. And when you're in a race this tight, those rookie mistakes can cost you big points. That might be the difference between you either being the home team, the away team, or sadly missing. I don't see them missing the playoffs. That would take quite a big drop in this second half, but staying in the top 4 is going to be very hard if they keep only picking up 1 point.
Well, speaking of teams that are struggling right now, and I wanted to get into this because I have a feeling there's going to be some comments on this one. Now, as covering NYCFC for the last 4 years, I understand the rivalry that has existed with Philadelphia, beating them in the Eastern Conference Final in 2021 down there in the COVID game, losing in the Eastern Conference Final in 2022. Jim Curtin, over the last couple of years, as well as I've gotten to know him, such as it is, writing for a rival team, is honestly one of soccer's good guys. We talked about, him as a possible replacement. I don't think he's the best replacement for Berhalter if it ever happened. I think he's a good assistant. I think he's a good guy to learn the system, to groom, to get training, to build up maybe to the next level. But there are some heavy, heavy rumors right now that Jim Sugarman and the rest in the upper management of Philadelphia is going to fire Jim Curtin. I've been following the subreddit for Philly for a while. There is some moldings in this case that most of the opinions are of the fact that upper management is frankly screwing over that team hardcore. But upper management and basically the ownership do not fire themselves; they fire the head coach. With a team like Philadelphia, which historically has done extremely well up until this year and especially last night, JJ, do you think he could get the axe?
I never, in the last 8 years that he's been there now, would have thought that man's position would ever be in jeopardy. He's not a bad coach. If you ever get the chance to sit with him one-on-one and talk tactics, it is like talking to a high-ranking general in the military. He can break things down to details that, unless you have a strong soccer IQ, you could easily miss that he's picking up. He is a great tactical coach. Unfortunately, Sugarman and his little buddy in the sporting director's seat royally screwed over Jim Curtin this year. It was obvious back during the CONCACAF championship. I've spoken to Blake, Nunez, Tannenwald. Doesn't matter what name you throw out there, JD. Blake wanted out of Philadelphia, and it wasn't because of Jim Curtin. It was because the front office wasn't bringing in help. Then Kai Wagner speaks out about it. Then you've got the whole Caven Sullivan thing, and the only reason they were able to get Caven was Mr. Jim Curtin. It wasn't their sporting director. Their sporting director wasn't even close to getting him. It was Jim who had to go in, talk with the family, talk with Caven to get him to sign and stay here. You know, firing Jim will set back Philadelphia more than the front office will ever realize. Mm-hmm. You are not going to get another coach into Philadelphia that can do what he did, because you're not getting Wilfred Nance to leave Columbus to come to Philadelphia. Like, there's really nobody that's going to come in and replace Jim. And unfortunately, I never thought I would ever say this man's on a hot seat, but his seat is hotter than Nick Cushing has ever been. And it's ridiculously sad because he doesn't deserve it.
Yeah. Harvey, any thoughts on this part before I have something of my own?
They just they announced it today in the morning that they sold Julian Carranza to Feyenoord.
That was
So this team that's already depleted as it is going to be much more depleted. They're injured. I get it. They're hobbled. They played a teenager in goal, I believe, yesterday against Montreal. They're down guys like Bedoya and, Gazdag is coming off the bench. This team is good enough to make the wild card at the very most. Clearly, this team's like at the end of a rope of an era. Not just any era, their best ever era that constituted multiple U.S. Open Cup finals, a supporter shield on the COVID season, a back-to-back conference finals, an MLS Cup final, CONCACAF Champions League success, all under one man who, under him and his squad, have gotten bargain buys and have excelled with guys like Daniel Gazdag, Jacob Glesnes, Mbaizo and such. Kai Wagner, who re-signed this offseason and is back. And hey, man, take it from me as a Red Bulls fan. You gotta rechurn the butter. You gotta replenish and put fresh spokes on that wheel and just keep it churning as best as you can. But once that well runs dry, you're on your own. Like Jim Curtin is one of the good guys, and he's actually one of the really good managers in MLS. But to me, he just doesn't have the horses. I think they're good enough to at least go on a mini run that keeps them in the wild card race. I think they make it as the 8th seed. Honestly, I don't think they make it I don't think they make it to like 6 or 7. I think they make it just as the 8th seed, as a wild card team. I just don't think that Jim Curtin's just going to let this line down. I just think that he's going to pump up this team, and once they get a little bit more healthy, then there'll be sort of that push that galvanizes the team. But I would really consider as well, thinking twice about letting go of a guy that's brought you this far, where if you just bring in better players, maybe it can bring you on another sustained run. I'm not saying it's going to be as good as it's been the previous couple of years, but something that keeps the ship afloat. You don't want to hear the fans and the Sons of Ben saying sell the team every so often. You don't want that. That's rare, especially when it's coming off a loss to Charlotte at home. I get it. This team hasn't won a game in mid-May, and since mid-May, they're on their own barren run. So I would just look. I don't like Philly, but if you're asking me, I would stick with Jim Curtin. Give him some fresh bodies. Give him a new striker, obviously, a new creative force, a winger, and just and go again. Because this Eastern Conference and this MLS as a whole is a bit fickle. One good transfer window this summer, and hey, you're pushing up the standings. So, with Jim Curtin, I don't think it would take that much to keep it.
Right now, this is a screenshot of playoffstatus.com, which is a site I often use. Right now, they have a 71% chance of missing the playoffs, which, again, when you look at a Philadelphia team of that pedigree that you've had for so long, with the Gazdogs, with Andre Blake, and all of these guys that have been staples for so long, it almost seems unheralded to imagine a team like that. Last year with the New York City Football Club, fine. Totti was gone, Maxey was gone. You had a changeover. Sean Johnson went to Toronto. So you can see that changeover happening. But for the most part, by and large, Philadelphia still has the same squad as last year. It's just they can't get it together. And one of the weirdest things about this, and this is the curious stat that I find more interesting more than anything else, is that the Philadelphia Union have only won one game at home this season. Statistically, when it comes to the Major League Soccer, your home record dictates, whether you get into a playoff spot. Your road record will dictate how far up you go in it. But as far as the Philadelphia Union, they're one win, 6 losses, and 3 draws. As a home team, which is honestly brutal. The fact that their road record is better is a very curious situation that most teams in the league never really ever have. So part of the reason why I thought they were going to win last night against a also equally struggling Montreal team is because they have done better on the road. And they did score first, and they did have it for a while, but then they blew it right at the very end and lost, like I said, 4-2. So it's going to be curious to see if where this team lands. Now, you think they can get 8th place. It is plausible. Right now this team is currently sitting 4 points, out of a playoff spot behind Atlanta, but they also have Montreal, who now has the tiebreaker against them, and Orlando as well, all of which have the same number of games. So I'm not sure what's going to happen there. But personally, coming back and tying it together a little bit, I think Jim Curtin would get fired before Gregg Berhalter does.
And that's a tragedy.
And that's a reality. But, I think Philadelphia. Now, the good news for Jim Curtin is he will not have a problem finding a job anywhere.
Oh,
no. No, he will land something somewhere very, very quickly. It might be here. It might even be in Europe. He has the ability to basically train, develop, and mentor. He could get a job overseas. I think it's certainly possible.
Totally agree. 100%.
So, nice. All right. I figure we got one more topic, unless you guys had anything else on the good Mr. Curtin.
I think we
I
all don't want to see the man go, but
what's that?
I said we all don't want to see him go. We all know he should be there. The real guy who should fall is the sporting director, but we all know that's not how it works here in the United States.
The higher up the chain you go, the more you're likely to protect yourself.
Yeah.
But all right, I want to mention one more thing here in this case, and we might wrap it up. We might take a couple of thoughts in here, guys, on this one. On Friday night, the New York City Football Club won a solid 4-2 win over Orlando at home. But it was marked heavily by 2 major injuries, that occurred when Malachi Jones, suffered basically. I think JJ, you said it was a foot injury to 2 different spots, right?
Yeah, it's like a foot ankle break. It's like right.
Yeah,
he's got one in the ankle, one in the foot, and it's not looking good.
Yeah, I'm checking it now. Glenn Crooks, who covers the team as well, he saw a picture of Malachi Jones, and he believes it's a tibia. So it's so it's not going to be good. It's probably going to be like a multi-month recovery. It might be a season ender just because we're in June already. So who knows?
It is a season end. It's already been announced as a season ender. But these pictures, by the way, that I'm showing here came from our photographer, Ernesto. Actually, Ernesto Diaz. Harvey, you remember that name?
Good guy.
Ernesto actually took these pictures, by the way. This is the Malachi Jones that everybody knew. His injury basically when he hit landed into Mason Stundar, the goalkeeper for Orlando as well, who, by the way, is also himself out for the season. There's been some talk lately about the injury front and what needs to be done better to protect the players. Like I said, Malachi was an absolute peach of a kid. I love this kid. He had a great story. Just last week, he was part of the press conference. He was talking about being raised in a family of 11 and how his brother plays for Columbus. And it was the first time the two brothers were going to be facing each other. It was just a really sweet, delightful kid. And you kind of gravitated around him constantly. And it sucks. Frankly, it just sucks hard that he is actually out for the season because of something like this. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't know if you ever talked to him or not. JJ, I'm not sure if you ever met him or not, but
yes,
dude, that dude never stopped smiling.
Several times.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, he could. It could be doom and gloom at training and just be a bad training session, and Malachi will walk by and smile, and everybody just lights up. He's just that kid, and he's that type of kid. And look, we both have covered him enough this year. Like, we know he can score, but even if he wasn't scoring, if he wasn't making the assists, he's just that player you need in the locker room to keep the locker room upbeat. Like, he was that guy. Obviously, we know Maxey is more than capable of keeping that role by himself, but this is a kid that they will miss. They're going to have to use the window now to really try to fill that void, because we saw at the beginning of the season, 1 win and 8 losses, and everybody thought Nick was gone after that, going into that last game, and then he pulled it off, and Raccoony shows up in Philadelphia, and now here we are with 4th place New York City instead of goodbye Nick Cushing. I don't know. Let's see what lives down by Jim that maybe can save Jim's career animal wise.
Well,
but Malachi Jones, he's going to be missed, and like we spoke about at Red Bull Arena, it is confirmed that he's done for the season. Yeah. There is a slim window where he might be back in time for the playoffs, but honestly, he's a super draft pick.
Mm-hmm.
He's the future of your franchise. I get this club wants nice shiny silverware, but even if he were to somehow be miraculous in rehab and be ready for the playoffs, let the kid have the season off and bring him back next year.
Would he be even 100% at that point? Yeah.
Yeah, I would not push it, even if he was 99.99%, or even if they did want to make the claim he was 100%. It's not worth pushing him, especially with the injury that he's coming back from. It ends a bunch of guys' careers. So if he does come back from it, don't play games with it.
And he may not even be 100% ever again anyway.
Yeah. He's too valuable to this team.
Stuff like that will always cause pain at some point.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. Sucks. Yeah. But, all right. I'm good on my side unless you guys had any other thoughts of your own.
I'll just say this. He does have, if he can come back as before, he's a bright spot, because ever since he scored against Toronto a while back, he's kind of taken off. And I will say this: there is depth in this attack. If you're telling me that you replace a guy like Malachi Jones with a guy like Agustin Ojeda, who scored against Orlando, you're doing well, because you're leaving guys like Jovan Mijatovic on the bench, Julian Fernandez on the bench as well. You got Hans Wolf, who's come to life this season.
Yeah, he scored the other night.
As long as you have your 10 in Santiago Rodriguez, you guys are gonna be a-okay. I know that Alonso Martinez is shining through, and he's keeping mostly Bakar on the bench, and he's gotten a bit of heat.
I like Bakar too. I got a soft spot for that kid. I get chewed out for it.
He's another one that's you just like. He's kind of like Malachi. He smiles, and you just can't help but to like the guy, even if he's only got 2 goals all year.
You just want to hug him, frankly, and tell him it's going to be all right.
The poor kid should have probably about 10 right now. He's only got 2, and no matter how negative the press gets on that poor kid, he's smiling. The one thing I will say that I do like about City, and I wish Red Bull would do this as well, is to open up a full training session to the media. Because we get to see what Nick does with these guys, and we all are trusted with the fact that we're not going to report what Nick is doing on that pitch. But when you get to see those full training sessions, you see these guys going to battle, and even when Nick was on the hot seat and he said, you know what, if the guys had given up on me, I would have stepped away. We saw it up there. Nobody gave up on Nick. Everybody was working extra hard, 2 times as hard. Munsuf, that poor guy, was literally working on his finishing drills nonstop. He wouldn't stop doing the finishing drills because he didn't want to be the reason that Nick got axed. That team is something special, and to lose one of those guys who light up a room, it's going to have an impact, but like we've said, there are other guys who are going to step up and bury the ball. Goal scoring is not a New York City problem,
which is odd to say.
Malachi, as much as he was a good offensive player, he was also one of those few forwards that gets back and also plays defense and helps.
He was quick.
He's a two-way guy. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, first time he came onto the pitch, I was amazed at how fast he went down the right side.
Yeah. Like, I got to see him with the twos when he really got to start, like, making his mark during that U.S. Open Cup run with JJ and Taylor and Jovan. And there was one play where him and Christian, it was like almost watching a track meet. One was on the right side, one was on the left side, and they are both blistering up the field, bypassing everybody. And Christian, I don't know if it was a timing thing, if they both were faster than they thought each other were, but the ball literally missed like Malachi Jones' toe by like a quarter of an inch to be popped in the back of the net. Like seeing that, you knew these two kids were special and that they would be at the first team at some point. Kind of like JJ, who, you want to talk about two players that are unlucky in New York City FC's program, JJ Fernandez and Taylor. Those two can put balls in the back of the net like nobody's business. And unfortunately, you've got Baccarat, you've got Alonso Martinez, you've got Santi Rodriguez, you've got Maxi Morales, you've got Jovan, like Hannes Wolf. There's no way to bring them up, even though they deserve to come up. They're scoring like crazy down on the twos.
That's why they got rid of the game. That's why they moved Gabe Siegel down to Houston.
Yeah, like this team has the talent. It's just going to be plugging those right pieces. And like we said, not all the time is the piece a superstar. It's sometimes that little guy that nobody really talks about who makes the difference. So we'll see what they do, but he's definitely going to be missed in the locker room, on the field. And you were there. Like, everybody was on their feet, happy. New York was up 1-0. Yankee Stadium was rocking. And then the injury happened, and it became almost as quiet as a church.
Yeah.
For about a good 20, 30 minutes before anybody would think of making a cheer. And, it brought down I mentioned in the article, like, it made it a somber event for a majority of the game because, look, you just watched two guys possibly lose their careers. And I feel bad for the AR. I know him personally. He wanted to pop the flag, but the new rule stopped him. He had to keep the flag down because that's the rule. Even though he could see with his eyeball that it was offside, and if he pops the flag, the two of them probably don't collide. The new rule, because God forbid the ball goes in the back of the net, got to keep it down. And unfortunately, we just watched two guys put their career in jeopardy because of a flag.
And thank you for that. Actually, that was part of the complaint that they were having about changing the rules on that to prevent injuries. Because this is the kind of thing that's right in people's faces that forces rule changes to happen. So,
and hopefully it does. Because like I said, like even the AR was shaking. Like you could see Dunn shaken from just the press box. Like he felt responsible for it, and we've all known Dunn. We've all covered MLS long enough to know that Dunn's that type of referee that before VAR he was like an eagle eye. The guy was just a split hair offside. He caught it every single time without miss. And to see him having to doubt himself when he didn't make a mistake, he did what the laws told him to do. And unfortunately, we all had to witness something we never wanted to witness in this game.
Yeah. So, well, let it be known that basically, every single thought that we've got is with both of those guys, and speedy recovery, healthy, 100%, and rear view mirror as fast as possible for this thing.
I don't know if you saw, but the Orlando keeper did have surgery this morning, and it did go successful.
But yeah, he's out for the year too. So
yeah,
for a team that's actually currently 3 points out of a playoff spot, that's a big loss in its own right.
Yeah.
But all right. So, gentlemen, I'm good at this point unless you guys had anything else you wanted to go into.
I am good. This has been a blast.
Cool. I have no problem with it. I'm still working the kinks out a little bit about how I want to do this. Bring in somebody to actually be able to do the producing side as well. But I'm focusing in my head how I want to do this. I'm looking at it from the perspective of different teams. Next week, I might be focusing a little bit more on the West Coast side of things, or at least the West in general, One of the things that was interesting when NYCFC CEO Brad Sims met with some of us this week is he's had the highest rated team on Apple TV last year. And I told you, JJ, again, not something you expect, but the team that got the best TV ratings last year for Apple TV was Real Salt Lake. And that's not the team you'd ever expect. I mean, okay, granted they got Chicho and everything, but it's because of the fact that when a game was over at 9:30 on the East Coast, people wanted to watch the next, whatever was on. And you know what? Real Salt Lake was 2 hours behind. There you go. Voila. So as a result, your most popular team in the league right now is out of Utah.
Yeah. But, too bad they couldn't figure out a name for their hockey team.
Well, they did. It's called Hockey Team.
Yeah.
Washington Football Team, Utah Hockey Club. I think it is called the Utah Hockey Club, isn't it?
Yeah, they're calling them. Well, technically they're just calling them Utah, but to fill in the bylines, they had to add some names, so it's Utah, and then it's just Hockey Club for now.
What did you do? You go on like logo.com to come up with that?
No, it's surprising because they had names out there that the fans liked. Yeti, Blizzard, like there were a bunch of names out there the fans liked and wanted, but the owner just couldn't make up his mind. So he's like, give me another year. And it's like, some of us in the hockey world, we're just like, oh, well, welcome to the PWHL where you can't come up with a name. You got to leave, but you can't come up with a name.
It's drawing comparison to like when Washington had a football team.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you going to name the team? I don't know. It's a football team. We'll call it a football team.
Yeah. I don't know.
Still hate the Commanders as a name, though. I would have loved, the Brigade.
That's brutal.
But irrespective. Gentlemen, I appreciate the time. You guys rock. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anytime, man.
So, be good. Take care. As always, stay awesome.